Welcome to our webinar. I hope you're not listening to it from your car, unless you're driving on a Tesla with lots of insurance. Welcome to the first part of evaluating estate tax techniques. I am not a puppet. I am artificial intelligence. The moderator today is lack of intelligence. I am wearing orange and blue because the moderator went to the University of Florida. He got an LLM in taxation and is forever, ever grateful to the many professors who gave him passing grades for no apparent reason. If you have any technical difficulties during this webinar, you are just out of luck. Okay, here comes the moderator, and I'm sorry that this introduction was not prepared well in advance. Thank you. Alan, it's time to start. Oh, okay, thank you. Don't be a dumbass. Okay, here we go. Welcome to part one of evaluating estate tax techniques. I am sharing my screen with you today and really looking forward to both part one, part two, and part three. If you have seen our webinars on estate tax planning and the use of the Estate View software, then I apologize that you're going to see it again. It's always different, but a lot of people on this webinar are here for the first time, or at least are watching us do estate tax planning for the first time. So I want to go a little bit slower than normal. If you came in through CPA Academy, then you're going to get continuing education credit as a CPA or an enrolled agent. We will have 4 polling questions, and we will wake you up for the polling questions. Anyway, if you came in through our website, then you will get no continuing education credit unless you're a lawyer, because if you are a lawyer with the state of Florida, then you do get Florida continuing education credit. Is that right, Josh?
That's correct.
That's right. Josh rarely tells me I'm correct, but see, he just did. If you have a question, you can email it to agassman@gassmanpa.com, or probably better yet, click the upside down pyramid. Think of the Steve Martin song, King Tut. Write down your question. If I happen to know the answer, I will answer it. If I don't know the answer, I will ignore it. So, nice surprise for you today. At approximately noon our time, which I think is 5 or 6 p.m. England time, we're going to have a nice little visit with a new friend of mine, Will Johns. Will Johns is a very talented and well-known guitar player, singer, and writer specializing in the blues. And he happens to be the nephew of Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Mick Fleetwood. I mean, couldn't you have been the nephew of some other people too? I think as a nephew, you could have unlimited uncles, you know, but this poor guy only got Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Mick Fleetwood to grow up with. What a drag that must have been. So we'll be covering these Will Johns slides in about 57 minutes. It will seem longer, believe me, but anyway, 57 minutes it will be. So a little background on the federal estate tax. First of all, as all estate tax lawyers learn in their first day of estate tax class, it is a voluntary tax. You only pay it if you don't plan, and if you're not a little bit charitable, if you're real wealthy. And we'll be mentioning that several times during this 3-part talk. The estate tax exemption today is $12,920,000 per person. So is the gift tax exemption. They are united. And for a married couple, then you have $25,840,000 of exemption. And it goes up every year with chained inflation. And what's chained inflation? Sorry, it's about 66%, about 2/3 of regular inflation. So this year it may go up January 1 by almost $1 million. It is going up, but values are going up faster because real inflation is probably 5 to 7% right now. When you die, anything over $12,920,000 in value will get taxed. There's some things you can do about that that aren't so complicated. For example, if I die with a $100 million stock portfolio in the name of my revocable trust, bye-bye 40 million. But if I put that in an LLC, I give the 0.5% voting member interest to a trust for my children, a 0.5% voting member interest to an asset protection trust. I keep 99%. I die. What's the value of my 99%? Well, a lot less than 99 million. And in addition, every year I can gift up to $17,000 per year per person. And my spouse can either give up to $17,000 per year per person, or my spouse can allow me to use my spouse's allowance, and that is called a split gift. It requires the filing of a gift tax return. The estate tax is imposed on citizens and residents of the U.S. If you are a non-resident alien and you own certain assets in the U.S., then the exemption is much lower. It's about 170,000, and everything over that 40% estate tax on the US-based assets, but not certain assets if they're owned in certain ways. There is an unlimited marital deduction. Whatever you leave to your spouse or into what's called a marital deduction trust for your spouse will not be subject to estate tax when you die, but will be subject to federal estate tax when your spouse dies. In 2026, the estate tax exemption will go down by half. So what we have now is a about a $6,450,000 exemption and a $6,450,000 bonus exemption. Now, if I give a $5 million gift today, that comes out of my bonus exemption. So then if my exemption goes in half, my exemption is still that $7 million amount. So in order to make a large gift to use the bonus exemption, so when the exemption comes down to half in 2026, you've got to gift more than $6,455,000 if you do it this year. And we'll be talking a lot about that in 2025 for sure. And you'll all be calling me December 28, 2025, wanting to know about it. If I die and leave perhaps $500 million, if I die and leave $5 million to my children, and then I leave the rest to my spouse, the $7,920,000 of the exemption that I didn't use is usable by my spouse if my estate files an estate tax return and makes an election to allow for portability. If my personal representative doesn't like my spouse, and by the way, everyone likes Marcia, not everyone likes me, but everyone likes Marcia. There's no personal representative in the world who would not allow that portability allowance box to be checked. But let's put that in my last will and testament just in case. But now Marcia, although she has a $19 million or $20 million exemption, only the $12,920,000 part is going to grow with chained inflation. The $7,920,000 is not going to grow. And if Marcia is lucky enough to marry someone who is incredibly wealthy and closes the cabinets and never says the wrong thing, and her wonderful new Prince Charming dies and leaves everything to his children, then she will have zero portability allowance. So that portability allowance, it sounds really good, but so do portobello mushrooms, and then you're never sure how it's all going to turn out. So I'm going to do the first polling question here. For those of you who are not accountants or lawyers, you have to know that this is to make sure that the accountant and lawyers, one, are listening, and number two, that they have to be very, very smart, or they were listening. So polling question number 1, which is incorrectly called polling question number 4, Will Johns is the nephew of, are we showing the polling question? Okay, Will Johns is the nephew of A, Eric Clapton, who wrote the song Badge, B, George Harrison, who wrote the song Badge, C, Mick Fleetwood, who had nothing to do with enemas, D, all of the above, or E, are you kidding me? Okay, we're running out of time. Please hurry. Got to get back to this thing. Thank you very much. The correct answer, of course, was all of the above. So on slide 37, and remember that TV show, Slide 37, Where Are You? Actually, it was Car 54, Where Are You? But here is slide 57, and this shows you the story of a family. Once upon a time, there was spouse 1 and spouse 2. They had a lot of assets, and spouse 1 died first. Spouse 2 was very sad until spouse 2 saw the estate planning documents, recognizing that $12,920,000 in assets would go to the family trust, also known as the bypass trust, also known as the generation skipping trust, also known as the B trust, held for the health, education, maintenance, and support of spouse 2. Spouse 2 could even be the beneficiary and have that power as long as it's limited to health, education, maintenance, and support after taking into account other assets of the surviving spouse. The surviving spouse can also have the power to direct how the trust assets pass on the surviving spouse's death. We normally limit that to being exercisable in at least small part to charity, and the rest 2 are for the benefit of descendants, either during the lifetime of the surviving spouse or only on the death of the surviving spouse as the drafter chooses, and not exercisable in any event in favor of the surviving spouse's estate, the surviving spouse's creditors, the creditors of the surviving spouse's estate. Now, if you say, I'd like my surviving spouse to get it all out, if she wants it, if he wants it, well, you could put a provision in there that says my surviving spouse can name another trustee, affectionately nicknamed the independent trustee, because they did not vote in the last election, and the independent trustee will have the authority to give my spouse any or all of the assets, whether my spouse needs it or not, in the sole and absolute discretion of this independent trustee, except on election day. Then therefore the spouse can get all the money out of the trust, yet creditors can't touch the trust while the assets are in the trust, and that trust could grow into $10 trillion, passing free of estate tax, to generation skipping trusts for the children. Yes, you see them there at the bottom. Aren't they jolly and folly? Child 1, child 2, child 3 can share a single trust that could go for up to 1,000 years if it's formed in Florida or Delaware. Delaware is infinite, and Nevada is 360 years, I believe. I think Texas is 360 years. This webinar seems like it's 360 years, but it's only another 47 minutes. And then each child can be the trustee of their trust, get what they need for health, education, maintenance, and support, and then direct where it goes when they die, based upon whatever limitations you build in. Many clients say that the child must be co-trustee with a licensed trust company so they don't blow it all. But anyway, should this client buy life insurance? Well, as soon as I get my life insurance license, I think they should. On the left-hand side, you have a Jolly Wally life insurance trust. Life insurance owned on the first dying spouse will be subject to estate tax unless it is in a properly drafted irrevocable life insurance trust. which is held for the health, education, maintenance, and support of guess who? The surviving spouse and descendants. If you put a pre-existing policy into that life insurance trust, there's a 3-year rule. If you die within 3 years of putting that policy in, unless you sell the policy to the trust, then it will still be considered as subject to estate tax on the death of the surviving spouse. Has anyone heard anything worth hearing yet? Okay. And Baltimore, I'm not kidding you, Will John is the nephew of those 3 people. All right. Then the surviving spouse's revocable trust will pass subject to estate tax on the second death. Again, hopefully not outright, but into long-term trust to protect the children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Can you imagine leaving $1 million in a trust for 1,000 years if it doubles every 10 years? If it doubles every 10 years, it's going to be worth 2 million, then 4 million, then 8 million, then 16 million, then 32 million, then 64 million, then 128 million, then 256 million. Maybe I'll just keep going on the rest of the time. Okay, so there are many estate tax planning techniques that we want you to make sure that you're familiar with. I'll be covering some today, and we'll be talking about comparing these different techniques as we go along. The most important technique for a planner to know for a client who's well over that 12 million or expects to be, or a married couple well over that 26 million, is the installment sale to a disregarded trust. The reason for this is threefold, which I will be showing you, and it's fourfold when you take into account that I get legal fees for setting this up. Okay, you have a client and they have an LLC with $9 million of assets in it, and this $9 million asset is going to be growing in value. The client puts it in an LLC, takes back a 1% voting member interest, 99% non-voting, and makes a $600,000 gift to an irrevocable trust for the spouse and descendants, also known as a SLAT, Spousal Limited Access Trust. Then the client values the 99% non-voting member interest and is told in this example that it's worth 66 1/3% of 9 million because of a 1/3, 33% discount, because who the heck would want a non-voting member interest in an LLC? We take what's called a lack of marketability, lack of control discount. They will vary from time to time, and the IRS does not always agree on the discount you take. So we will have this trust buy this LLC interest for a $6 million note. You notice that the trust's value is 10% of the amount of the note. That is a rule of thumb in our industry that many of us follow. A little bit more, maybe a little bit safer, a little bit less, or a lot less may still be safe. But anyway, here's 3 things I've done. Number 1, yes, I earned a fee. Number 2, I have reduced an estate from 9 million to 6 million. Number 3, although the 9 million in the LLC may grow at a high rate, the promissory note is only going to grow or only pay a rate of return. This month, it would be about 3.75% if it's a note for over 9 years. And third, the client will pay the income tax on the income from the trust. So when you put those 3 things together, that is a potent situation. 5 years later, if the 9 million grew to 13.5 million, the note is still 6 million. Billy got a few little payments, and the trust, he only made a $600,000 gift. But the trust really, if you think about it, 13.5 million minus 6 million is $7.5 million that trust is worth now, and it only cost him $600,000 of his $12,920,000 exemption. So the applicable federal rate is going up, but right now it's still fairly low. There's a lot of things you can do between an individual and a trust. Besides a sale for an installment note, you could do a sale for a self-canceling installment note, but the interest rate, for example, a 70-year-old would have to be about 4%, 5% higher. So you would just hope to die within your life expectancy of 14 years for that to work. Or you could do a lifetime annuity. If you did an annual lifetime annuity, it would be about $102,000 a year for a 70-year-old. If he puts $1 million in the trust and he gets paid $102,000 a year for a year, then he dies. Everyone's not as sad as they would have been because you just saved estate tax on $900,000. And then there's something called a GRAT that we will probably get to tomorrow, if not today. So that is the PowerPoint. Now I'm going to get to I'm going to use the EstateView software to illustrate. The EstateView software, I go to estateview.link on my computer, and I click estateview.link, and it comes up. And by the way, this software is free for any attendee of this presentation. We are glad to share use of it. We are in our beta testing stage here, so maybe we should do another polling question just to get the other polling question out of the way while I have my slides up. Okay, so here's polling question number 1, also known as polling question number 2. For those of you who are accountants, you understand why. Would you like to beta test our EstateView software? Yes, at no charge. B, I don't like beta fish. C, no, but I do like beta fish. Or D, no, I would rather buy another set of encyclopedias. The answer for you lawyers who are watching is A, yes, you do want to free trial our software to tell us anything that might be wrong with it. Okay, Josh, let me know when they're done joshing. Okay, we're good to go. All right, so now we're going to give you an example of an estate planning situation. The software, when you open it, just opens up to this, and then I have here John Q. Public, and like all average Americans, he's very wealthy. He has used $7 million of his lifetime exclusion. Let's say he's not used any of his lifetime exclusion. Ha. All right, so for a 70-year-old, you see that here, 70 years old, his actuarial date of death, expected 2035. But he's wealthy, he'll probably live longer than the actuarial tables. Let's give him till 2040. All right, oops, sorry. Let's give him till 2040. And then he's used none of his exemption, and he's going to earn $200,000 a year. He's going to save from his annual earnings for his lifetime. State tax rate, as I said, is 40%. Now, if you're in one of the states that charges state tax, remember you're going to pay more than that. If you're in a state that has a 9% estate tax, to estimate the total effect, you may click this up to 49%. I'll keep it at 40% because I'm in Florida, and that seems pretty safe from a lot of things. Okay, now change CPI. The average has been about 3.71%. And let's say that we expect inflation over his lifetime to be at 5%. He is a widower, and let's just say, so I can show you that portability is there. And when his last dying spouse died, she had a $4.5 million allowance she didn't use, and she left him a $2 million credit shelter trust. His house is worth $10 million, just like your house is worth $10 million. It's growing at 3.28% a year. Typically, houses don't grow so fast except in the last 3 years, which is why they may come way down. I had a meeting yesterday with a young, enthusiastic doctor married to a young, enthusiastic architect, and they enthusiastically bought a house in Tampa for about $900, put an $850 mortgage on it, and today the house is worth $780. They only bought that house a year and a half ago. So they like the house, but they don't like the mortgage. But the interest rate is still low. But that's happening. That's happening. And if you think there will not be another recession, then I have some swampland to sell you in Florida. All right. So this gentleman has been funding a trust for his children. And there it is. And it's got $750,000 in it. He's got 4 children. He even likes them. So he's able to give 4 times 17, $56,000 a year this year. And he's thinking about buying a life insurance policy. He does not have one now, so we'll just have no life insurance. Well, let's just say he has a $100,000 fully paid life insurance policy. And he is thinking, so I'll just copy policy to next policy. Oh, copy policy to post planning. He's thinking about putting that in a life insurance trust. So we'll show that he's thinking about putting that in a life insurance trust. And then we'll talk later about an installment sale. So here is what happens if he does no planning whatsoever. I click here, current estate, tax, no planning. He starts with 60 million, plus the 2 million bypass trust, plus the 100,000 of insurance that for some reason doesn't show there. I'll have to fix that later. Then at the end of the year, he's up to a little bit more than that. His combined estate tax exemption plus the portability allowance is 17,890,000. The estate tax is $18,075,000. So that's no planning. Now, no planning, he dies in 17 years. It's a whole different ball game. The bypass trust grows to 4,969,000. Without gifting, his estate tax is 50, but because he's going to do gifting, the estate tax goes down to 49 million. Now you may say big whoop, but saving $1 million here or there is not a bad thing. And you see that gift trust here would grow to 4 million, and that would pass estate tax free. So without gifting, 50,700,000. After gifting, 49 million, so it saves $1.5 million. That's 40% of 40 million. You could probably write a song about that. All right. Going back to the life insurance, I need to make this a permanent policy. There it is. It's a permanent policy. It is there. So before life insurance planning, and let's give him a little more life insurance. Let's give him $1 million. Or let's give him 5 million. 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And let's be realistic and say he's got to make some premium payments. We'll say for 11 years he'll be paying $11,000 a year. Maybe that's already got a nice cash value. 11 years, $11,000 a year. Okay, so before life insurance planning, when I click on gifting, he has an estate tax of 53 million. But after life insurance planning, it goes down to 49 million because of that nice, friendly life insurance trust. Now, just so you know, he could have also had a second to die trust with his spouse. Before she died, she might have funded a second to die trust, and if she had, there could be some more estate tax savings. Now, I want to go back to the gifting. We assumed that he's got 56,000 a year of gifting ability for the first 9 years. Let's say after that he's going to have more grandchildren. We'll guess he'll have 9 people to gift to at 17,000 adjusted for inflation. That's going to help a little bit as far as from 54 million to 52 million in estate tax. But what if he puts the assets in a limited liability company and he gives non-voting member interests and he takes a 30% discount on the gifting? So instead of gifting 17,000, he's able to gift 17,000 divided by 0.7. Alexa, what's 17,000 divided by 0.7?
17,000 divided by 0.7 is approximately 24,285.7143.
Okay, so at 24,000 a year per person, I can click discounted gifting. The estate tax goes from 52 million to 51 million. So now he says, wait a minute, what about if I do an installment sale? You said I could do an installment sale. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put, let's just put this at 20 million of his assets into an LLC. If we take a 30% discount, then the value of a 99% LLC interest is approximately 14 million. So I put $1.4 million into an irrevocable trust, and I sell the 99% non-voting member interest for a $14 million note. The note is a conventional note, and it is for his life expectancy, which I'll guess is about 13 years. And he'll pay the income tax on this. So what happens here? When I click the, first I'll click life insurance. So you see we're at 47 million without the installment sale. Now with the installment sale, I click on the installment sale and I'm at 38 million. He says, I like that. That really reduced my taxes. How much can I put in the installment sale? Well, you still have 27 million of investments here. So let's go ahead and click up that installment sale. So you see, as I'm clicking up the value before discount, I'm clicking down the investments that he'll have left to be able to do this with. Well, let's see if we do 30 million. That would be a 2,152,000 seed capital gift, 30,750,000 in the LLC, $21,525,000 note. We'll go back to 3.75% interest, which is what it would be this year. And I click on installment sale. It goes from from life insurance 47 million, installment sale, that saved $14 million. Now, for those of you who would like to remember what we did, I'll do 2 things for you. First, I'm going to hit File, Save. And now I've saved all this information on my computer, which I can share with you later when you become a user. And I can share it with my clients, give them a videotape of this, and let them play with it, which they enjoy doing. And then I can also go ahead and generate a letter which explains all this. So I'm hitting Generate Client Letter. Now, and while it's doing the letter, I will mention, if you have an Apple computer or an iPad or even a phone, this does now work on all those items. So now I've got the letter. I'll just open the letter up. I'll save this and we'll send it to everybody. I can enable editing of the letter, and that tells you all the data input, and it explains the situation. Okay, so let me get out of WordPerfect here. Let me go back to the program. Let's say he wants to get married. Silly decision, according to many people, but nevertheless, he does. We click here on the second spouse. Voila, he has a spouse. Her name is Mary Sample. She is not going to change her name. She is, let's say, 60 years old. She's going to live until 2049, and she's going to spend, after he dies, she's going to spend a net of $275 a year until she's 80. Then she'll spend $25,000 a year. So she lives longer. Now there's no estate tax for a longer period of time, but because of the delay, the estate tax is more. With the installment sale, we're at 42 million because the installment sale, yeah, still there. So, and then with the credit shelter trust, how much could he put in a bypass trust when he dies? Well, a lot more than 9 million because of inflation. So we'll go ahead and increase the bypass trust. How high will it go? Goes to 12 million. Then also, she may remarry, and when she remarries, she may lose the portability allowance. Yep, that would not increase the tax here because they're going to use the whole thing on the bypass trust, so she's not going to have a portability allowance. If the exemption doesn't drop by half in 2026, instead of 42 million of estate tax, they'll pay 34 million. And that's where the bypass trust gets the first 12 million, Kevin. So I'll go ahead, just for those of you who want to make sure you understand how that works, I'll click generate client letter, and while it's generating the client letter, let's do your favorite thing, another polling question. Thanks to Matt Polling, the real estate lawyer in Tampa, for thinking up polling questions. All right, page 85 is the polling question. Polling question number 2. Thank you for your help on this. I do appreciate it. Does Estate View software seem A, too darn complicated, B, too darn simple, C, just darn right, or D, the porridge is so hot, I burned myself and I'm calling a personal injury lawyer? The correct answer, for those of you who are not lawyers but have any kind of possible cause of action, is D. Call us immediately. Okay, Josh, are we ready to go back? Okay, some of the attendees are still awake. We're glad of that. All right, so I ran a separate letter. So I'm going to send you, Josh, we're going to send everybody the single letter and the married letter. Now, these letters are going to be much better next week because Jill is of our office, who's very brilliant, former financial advisor, former CPA, not so smart to now be in law school, is working on the new letters. I have the edits and I'll be looking at them to improve them. So thanks very much to Jill. And thanks very much to Joey. Joey is also a Stetson Law student working for us during the summer and vastly improving this software. If any of you would like to help out, we will gladly accept your help. Now, the client comes in and says, you know, I've got bad news. And the bad news is I have a short life expectancy. So, oh, you do? I'm very sorry to hear that, but very glad for your family, because I'm going to go now to the SCIN calculator. Now, this has nothing whatsoever to do with dermatology. But when I go to the SCIN calculator, what you have here will be a 70-year-old. And as of today, the 75/20 rate, which if you're not a lawyer and accountant, don't even worry about what that is, but it does change. So we have to set it up. And the computer knows that it's 4.2%. And the actuarial table that we're able to use right now, that we have to use, is table 210. And a 70-year-old has a life expectancy of 15.4 years, which means that half of you 70-year-olds out there will be alive in 15.4 years, and half of you not so much. So we can use a 15-year promissory note, and then the applicable federal rate today for a note over 9 years is 3.69%. And you can use the lowest of this month, last month, or the month before, and the computer knows that that's 3.69%. But if you want to be sure, you can click here. Every month, the US government, now that it's funded, comes up with the short term, the midterm, and the long term semi-annual rate. If it's less than 3 years in duration, it's 4.38% this month, but the lowest of the last 3 months is 4.25% that you could use for a 3-year note. For a 9-year note, the lowest of the 3 months is 3.54, and for a over 9-year note, the lowest is 3.69. Now, you use the semi-annual rate even though the note pays interest only annually. The reason, I don't know, ask Jerry Hesh. He explained it to me years ago, and I still don't know. Oops, lost my calculator, go back, and it will remember where I was, in Clearwater, Florida. All right, so if I had said a 5-year note, then it would have given me the 3.5% interest rate, but I'm going to go with a 15-year note. All right. I'm going to have the note paid interest only. There are some people who think you need to have it amortized, or it's safer to amortize it. If it's interest only, you see that the annual payments are going to, on $1 million note, are going to be $79,000 a year. How does that work? Well, the applicable federal rate is 3.69, and to make this an even deal, the IRS regulations, the annuity regulations, Kevin, is that right? The annuity regulations say that if you want this to be an arm's length transaction, not a gift between the person who gives the assets to the trust and the trust who gives the assets back, then the interest rate has to be 4.2264% higher than the regular rate. So the total rate, 7.9164%. Now watch this. If I go to a 10-year note from 15 to 10, the premium goes down. So the interest rate goes down a little bit. So that's why you have to calculate. That's why it's nice to have software. In the old days, it would take 2 hours to figure this out. So we're going to assume now that the assets sold are going to grow at 7%. And I'm going to go from basic to advanced here. I click on advanced, and I can also say that I want to see till age 93. All right. So what do we have here? It's a mess. No, it's not a mess. It just sounded good. I was joking. $1 million goes into the trust. It grows at 7% a year. The payments are $80,671 a year. I got to get that down back to 15. Payments are $79,164 a year. The note is there. The interest coming out to the client is there. The end note balance still $1 million. It gets paid in 2037. So if the client dies before 2037, you did really well. If the client dies after 2037 or 2037 and after, then this backfired and you had a lot of extra interest going back into the client's estate. So the polite thing to do is to die before year 15 when this note matures. Now, you could have the note longer than the life expectancy, but a lot of issues arise. One issue is that the tax law, according to the IRS, says that if you go beyond life expectancy, you have to follow what's called the private annuity rules, which we will cover next week. But then you may have to have very large funding within the trust in order to do the private annuity. The other issue is the IRS may say, hey, if you're going to get that big of payments out of the note, then maybe you really just kept the whole trust. Now, I don't think they would be successful in that because of the Philadelphia Trust Company and cream cheese decision. But if you don't like cream cheese, then you might want to be careful. But if you wanted to do a 20-year note with all of those caveats, then, oops, sorry, go back to 3.69. If I wanted to do a 20-year note, I could. It could be self-canceling, but now my interest rate premium is much higher. Now, let's say that the client is much older. The client is 81, or even we've had them as high, we've had them as at 92. Well, look at the interest rate, 29%. That is not legal in most states. But then we could instead gross up the principal. So we loan $1 million, but instead of grossing up the interest, we gross up the principal. The 92-year-old puts the assets in the trust, puts $1 million in the trust, and is going to get payments of $294,000 a year for 20 years or 15 years. That dog's not going to hunt. So, but the payments are only $290,000 a year. If the person dies within that time, you've got a lot out. Now, in order to do a self-canceling installment note, and by the way, I hope they don't have these on LegalZoom, because most of the ones we see done even by lawyers may have issues. But in order to do this SCIN note, the IRS says you have to be in reasonable health at the time it's entered into. Many of us believe the real answer is that you can follow the private annuity rules, which say that you have to have better than a 50% chance of not dying from any particular physical condition at the time you enter into the arrangement. So you could have heart disease that could bring you down in 13 months. You could have a cancer that might bring you down in 14 months. You could have COPD, which may bring you down in 13 months. So in reality, your real life expectancy is 7 months. But the law says as long as none of those conditions have more than a 50% chance of bringing you down within a year, you can enter into a private annuity, and maybe you could enter into a SCIN. And we'll be comparing private annuities and SCINs pretty soon here. But I can go back here now to the good old days when I was only 70 years old, which is 6 years from now, and go back to my 15-year life expectancy, note, 3.69%. And this is what I can take back now to the original model. So remember, 15 years, 15 years, and the premium, let's see where that premium is. Why am I not showing a premium there? Oh, because now I want to gross up the interest, not the principal. Okay, there's my premium, 7.9%. 15 years, 7.9%. I go back, remember that song, Get Back to Where You Once Belonged? We could talk about that song when we get to the top of the hour with Will John. Anyway, we'll get back to where we once belonged. Go to the installment sale, fill in 8%, close enough for estimation work, and then go 15 years on the note. So we can compare what we just did to this. If he dies within the 15 years, then the estate tax is going to be dramatically low. But if he doesn't die within the 15 years, it's a little bit higher than it was going to be. But let's go ahead and have him die within the 15 years. Maybe he likes parachuting a lot. He does it every single day. So we'll take him back. And when we take him back to installment sale, Kevin, that should go way down. So anyway, oh, I forgot to click self-canceling. Click self-canceling, And there's the estate tax, 11 million, if your client will only die promptly on time. Just like get me to the church on time. Maybe this one is get me to the morgue on time. I don't know. All right. Before we cover qualified personal residence trusts, I want to do the final polling question for those of you who really need to get going to your next appointment on a Saturday. Really? You have another appointment on a Saturday? By the way, in about 3 to 4 hours, you'll be getting an email from us, and it will have a place where you can click to replay this outstanding webinar. No matter how many times you want to watch it, you can watch it unlimited times. Okay, so page 110 is where the next polling question is. It's polling question number 4, for those of you who are math majors. How are you involved in estate planning? We really want to know. Well, just like that Peter Frampton song, I really want to know. Are you A, an advisor? B, you're interested in your own planning? C, both of the above, not all of the above, both of the above, but you could, or D, sorry, I signed on to the wrong webinar, but now I still want to watch Will Johns at noon. Okay? So the correct answer is whatever the correct answer is. Josh? Go. All right. We are good to go. All right. Well, you know, before we do QPRTs, let me see if there are any questions. Was anyone awake? Anyone at all awake? Yes. Some people were awake, and you're from all over the world. Christiana, welcome from Italy. Okay. Somebody got bumped off and signed back in. Well, thank you very much for that. Okay, humor is often necessary when facing both death and taxes in a single educational hour. I agree, Jane. If only I knew something funny to say. Okay, James, thank you very much. It's important to remember that the annual exclusion is only for gifts of present interests. Gift splitting requires filing of 2 gift tax returns and applies to all gifts made during the year. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Molly, they are not located in the handout section of CPA Academy. Yes, we're going to email them to you later because I don't know how to put them there right now since it was only. Okay, Jacqueline, I hear 2 voices speaking. Well, it could be your medication levels. You might want to check on that because there's only one of me, one of me, one of me, one of me. Okay, Mick Fleetwood, that is correct. Mick Fleetwood will not be here, but he does send his disregards. All right, then repeat the 3-year rule for life insurance. All right, if I own a life insurance policy on my life and I give it away to a trust or my son, and I die within the 3 years, then the death benefit is still considered to have been in my estate as if I received it in my estate for estate tax purposes. I could instead set up an irrevocable trust and buy a fresh life insurance policy. That would be a life insurance policy that makes passes at other life insurance policies. Or I could set up an irrevocable trust, donate money to that trust, and then have the trust pay me the money in exchange for the life insurance policy. That may rub out the 3-year rule. So thank you for asking. Susan says you're doing great. Thank you very much, Susan. Tell Marcia that, will you? Okay. Any other questions here? All right. Thank you. I did have the term at the life insurance at term. Okay. How do you get the software accessibility? If you just send me an email that says beta or beta fish or software, Josh will send you the secret email address for you to tell the computer. The secret email address, which is test, T-E-S-T, at test, test.com. So first you'll put in your computer estate view link, ESTVIEW.LINK, right, Josh? Then when it says, what is your email address? You will do what you do to your children. You will lie, and you will put test, T-A-S-T, at test, T-E-S-T.com. And then after that, when it asks you your name, you will lie again, and you will put test, T-E-S-T, not Tex. If you're from Texas, don't put Tex, put test. You don't have to capitalize on anything, although I'll be capitalizing on the software eventually. And then you will be testing the software and hopefully telling us that it's not so bad. Okay, sorry for the commercial. All right, Alicia, my husband is a teacher. He really enjoyed your teaching style while I've been taking your class. Well, thank you, Alicia's husband. At least someone is enjoying this. Okay, and John says, hello to the puppet. Hello. All right. Thank you. That answers most of your questions. Besides, the question is, why is he even doing this? All right, questions aside, literally, we will do one more thing with the software, and I expect you to rehearse this at home, but I'll just show you so you can start playing with it, and that is the Qualified Personal Residence Trust. Because remember, this gentleman had a $10 million home, so that's pretty good. So we'll go up to 10 million here. By the way, please invite me to your $10 million home. And he was 70 years old. He's pretty sure that he'll make it for 7 years. The 75-20 rate is still 4.2%. And he's going to put that home into a qualified personal residence trust. He's going to have the right to live in it rent-free for 7 years. So what does this tell me? He's got an almost 80% chance of surviving the term. The gift is 59.62% of the value of the home. So the amount of the gift is $5,962,000. That's his gift. So he files a gift tax return, uses $5.9 million of his estate tax exemption. And what happens is at the end of year 7, it is out of his estate for estate tax purposes. So that's probably not as good a use as putting cash, as putting marketable securities in an LLC and doing an installment sale, but you can do this in addition. And we'll be talking more about it. But when I go to advanced, I'm going to show the numbers till he's 87. He's going to have 7 years to live there rent-free. And after the 7th year, in order to live there, he's going to have to pay rent based upon, let's say, 6.5% of the value of the home. And he'll have to pay the rent for the rest of the term. So what happens is the home in year 7 is worth $14 million, assuming growth at 5%. I'm going to turn that down to 4% to be more realistic, which is that's about the average. And we'll talk more about that next week. But now, after the 7th year, he has $13 million worth of home out of his estate, and he only made a $5.9 million gift. But better yet, now he starts paying rent. So you see this rent being paid at 7% on a $13 million home. That's $1.7 million. It's income tax free, which I'll explain next week. It doesn't cause an income tax. But by the time he dies at age 87, he's got $31 million out of his estate. So this saves him $12 million of tax, and all he had to do is move his home into it. Alternatively, if his home is sold in year 8, then there's no rent paid, I can simply move the rent down to 0 rent because there's no rent paid, and now you still have $20 million worth of value. So thanks very much for attending part 1 of this seminar. If you have any questions on anything at all, please let us know. My email address is agassman at gassmanpa.com. And now we're going to take about a 1 or 2 minute break. And technology willing, I'll be joined by Will Johns. And if he wants to bring Eric Clapton and Mick Fleetwood, that'd be all right. Josh, what is our timing situation? All right. So this is your opportunity to get a drink with or without alcohol, but probably not with alcohol since we're going to talk about rehab today as well, before we get with Will. If we have a technical problem and Will can't join us, then we'll do this next week after more technical rehearsing. I'll turn my camera off a little bit so you don't have to see me. Hopefully we'll have Will Johns sooner rather than later. Is he coming? How do you know? All right, Will Johns is popping on, I heard. We can cover a couple of screens while he's on his way here.
Testing, testing.
There he is, the melodic voice of Will Johns.
Okay, and this. Okay.
Yay! Crotty.
Crawdaddy Club, where it all began.
I love it. All right, well, Will, you have a lot of musical fans on here and a lot of accountants and lawyers. Tell us a little bit about who you are. Oops. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Will. Oh, there he is again. Magical.
I'm getting a lot of pop-ups and prompts here, Alan.
You don't have to do anything at all.
Okay, I'll try not to mess with anything and
Don't touch that set.
leave the controls alone.
Leave the controls alone. So, Will, you and I met just a few weeks ago when you were in Clearwater, Florida, performing with that amazing group, the Cream of Clapton. I knew you at first. I was reading about you, and this is the guy who does all the guitar on the Cream of Clapton, even though it sounds like 2 or 3 guitars, and 90% of the vocals. What a talented guy. And then I continue reading, or actually Kim Copeland is reading and says, oh, and he's the nephew of Eric Clapton, the nephew of Patty Boyd, who we've had on this webinar. So I reached out to our common friend, and you called me pretty quickly, and it was just like a great dream having you at my house that evening and getting to know you, and also getting to know this special cause that you're working on, which I think is really important. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll have a very nice conversation, and our viewers are going to be able to basically text me questions, which I will pass on.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Well, my name is Will Johns. Thank you. What's your name? And I'm here in Brighton on the south coast of the UK. And as Alan said, I'm a musician and guitarist and singer. with the Cream of Clapton band just recently, and then when I can, I also pen some of my own songs. And basically, I'm a performing musician, and I'd say a performer before a songwriter or anything else really. When I took myself to college, I left school without any formal qualifications due to some some family dynamics, and that's obviously where it all started. My mum struggled with alcohol and drug addiction, and so from a very early age, in fact, as far back as I can remember, that's been a part of my life. So my mum left the country before I finished school, and I went to LA to pursue a career of stardom and rock and roll. My father being Andy Johns, very well-known and respected hard rock music producer, and the brother of Glyn Johns. So, and that didn't really work out. I think I lasted about a month in LA before I was sent back to England with my tail between my legs. So, and at that time, the culture for young people like me was house music and the rave scene in the UK. And once again, with that, there was a lot of drugs. And in London at that time, in the very early 90s, you were either a drug dealer or you weren't cool, you weren't in, and there was no real place for you. Well, I didn't really fancy that, having grown up seeing the devastation that that kind of thing can cause firsthand. And so I managed to get myself into a college in Oxford on a scholarship by being somewhat entertaining and pleading with the college managers and promising them that I would stick to my studies. And I got onto what they call a BTEC course in performing arts, and that was kind of an all-encompassing course where with a little bit of ballet, contemporary dance, acting techniques, stagecraft, TV and video production. And after the first year, then you chose a few of those modules to focus on. Of course, during that time, I started my first band, which was called Cloud9, and my studies started to suffer, and I leaned more towards playing the guitar and singing than ballet and pirouettes and rond de jambes and all of those sort of things. I did finish the course, but I was definitely a performer, and I guess in a nutshell, a bit of a show off. So all singing, all dancing, and from my trips back and forth from the States as well, I seem to, picked up some of the coolest clothes as well. I think I had a hoodie, one of those, what do they call them? Those Mexican style hoodies. I think I had one of those before anybody else had ever seen one in the UK. I've got my other little Mexican friend here. This is Minnie. She just wants to say a quick hello.
Oh,
There you are, Minnie.
very cute. So, Will, let's go. Well, let's go back a little bit. What was? Tell a little bit about your family tree. Who your mother was, who your two aunts were, who they married, and what your early memories are of being associated with these legends.
Okay, well, I guess I was born into just a musical family tree. But before that, even before that, my mum, I guess, had the same performing ability, and she was a child actress. And her most, I guess, notable role that she landed was Enid Blyton's famous Five on the television. But she also did TV commercials for Lovely Jubbly Orange Juice, amongst other things. And she was actually the breadwinner before her older sisters, who were to go on to be even more famous, Patty and Jenny Boyd. Both of them, I think, first of all, were models. And while modeling, Patty caught the eye of George Harrison, Mr. Marveloso, if you will, from the Beatles. And at the same time, my auntie Jenny was dating a drummer by the name of Mick Fleetwood. They were, you know, teen sweethearts, I believe. So so then the next thing that happened was that George and Patty fell in love, and they were to be married, and that changed everything for the girls. And my mum, in particular, she was still at school. The rules changed as far as the headmistress of the school would give her special treatment because, well, her sister was married to a Beatle. So my mum was allowed to go into the office and smoke cigarettes when the other kids at school would be, you know, getting suspended for such a crime. So it kind of made things, turn things on their head. And I think that you know, that had a lasting effect on my mum, that the rules didn't apply, if you like. So Jenny Boyd, she went on to marry Mick Fleetwood, of Fleetwood Mac. And at the beginning, of course, Fleetwood Mac were a very, very serious blues band. The T-shirt that I'm wearing, the Crawdaddy Club, this was a club, a musical place in Richmond and Twickenham. It had a couple of different venues that it shared, and it was the birthplace of the Rolling Stones. I just performed at the Crawdaddy Club, I think it was in April, and it was actually 60 years to the day that the Beatles went and met the Rolling Stones at the Crawdaddy Club.
Wow.
The other people that would have been hanging around at the Crawdaddy Club that were there in the Thames Delta at the time would have been people like Rod Stewart, Ronnie Wood, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, to name but a few. You know, it was a centralized hub. The club was run by a guy called Giorgio Gomelowski, and actually it finished probably in the late 60s. It just sort of disappeared, and I myself reopened it in the mid 90s with a friend of mine, Ian McHugh, at its original site at the Station Hotel, which is actually opposite Richmond Station in West London. And I used to hold jam nights every Tuesday, weekly, where local musicians, lost souls, if you like, could come and jam with other like-minded musicians, bluesers really, but anything was allowed. And I did that for a couple of years, until I returned to the States on my second attempt of fame and fortune in Hollywood. Should I go on, Alan?
Well, let me show a picture here. Let me share my screen again. Can you see a picture there?
No.
Josh, you see a picture?
Oh, I do now.
So what's going on in this picture?
Okay, it's flipped to my discography, but before we had the picture of Nile Rodgers and Ronnie Wood and Eric and myself.
And where was
So
this?
this was at
go
the
ahead.
concert for Ginger Baker at the Shepherd's Bush Empire in let's see, I want to say 2020. Yeah, it must have been. Just literally weeks before the dark times, before the world ground to a halt. And this was quite a moment of my life. I guess in many ways it had been everything that I'd been working towards. Eric Clapton being a huge influence on me, both musically and also when I was growing up. I would spend most of my weekends and school holidays at the Clapton residence because my Auntie Patty, who was with George Harrison, then married Eric. Patty could never have children, and there was a certain time when Patty and Eric thought about fostering me or adopting me, as my home life was somewhat tumultuous with my mum's addiction problems and her new partners who weren't really doing anything to help her, but more feeding her problems, really, whether that was a control situation or whatever. It certainly wasn't helping her. So I used to spend my time that I wasn't at school at Patty and Eric's house, and Eric was very kind to me. He showed me my first riff on guitar and inspired me that way. And he also taught me how to fish. I already had an interest in fishing, but I couldn't cast a rod, a conventional rod even. And he taught me how to cast a spinning rod. And then he also taught me the fine art of fly fishing, which is, of course, the old English gentleman's sport of casting a fly for a trout, which I know is very popular now worldwide. So really, he gave me the tools as a young man to not only feed myself with the fish that I might catch, but also to earn a living playing songs, which I later found out when I was on the streets of Oxford in between my college classes, and I found out that I could, make a few quid, enough to buy some noodles anyway. And that sort of set me up for life, really.
So what, I know we have a lot of huge Eric Clapton fans, a lot of huge George Harrison fans. I see Ronnie Wood there. Can you tell us a little bit about what they were like as you were growing up, as people, as a father figure, as examples, what they're like now? I know you were just recently fly fishing with Eric. What are these guys like back out off the stage?
Well, one thing that I guess one thing that made an impression on me, or that I respected from a very early age from hanging out with Eric, was that he still is very real. He's just himself. There's no affectations. I guess as a kid, as a child, you know, you're very hyper aware of people putting on a voice for you, talking down to you, perhaps, you know, anything like that. You know, even if you don't mind it, you're still aware of it, you know, how people talk to you and how people make you feel. And for me, I think especially having parents who were altered by substances day in, day out, and the substances were wide and varied as well, whether it be alcohol or different kinds of drugs, you would find yourself talking to different people within the same person, if that makes sense. So just speaking about Eric anyway, he was always the same person day in and day out with me. And that's made an impression on me, and I think that I've been like that in my life, although it seems to rub some people up the wrong way. But some people think I'm arrogant, and I think, what the hell do they know?
I've not found you to be arrogant at all. I don't think you have an arrogant bone in your body. Let's talk about Turn Up for Recovery, which I think is, you know, maybe the real reason we're here, and maybe one of the reasons you're on Earth, to help others. Can you tell us about Turn Up for Recovery, about Crossroads, and about what your ambassador role is?
Yeah. Obviously, from what I've mentioned, any way to help anybody struggling with addiction, as my mum did, anything that I could do to help somebody in that situation, because I know firsthand how hard it can be. And let me just say that with my mum's experience, I watched her get the finest treatment and come out the other side, having been through hell and having to face her demons, and be straight for a number of years, even before succumbing back to alcohol. Unfortunately, she got involved with heroin at an early age, and I think that that's a terrible drug, because I think it can leave somewhat of a hole in the human soul that can never be, or that can never be filled again. And I think any survivors of being addicted to that particular drug, or any opiate-based drug, you know, it takes an amazing amount of work. So what I'm trying to say is that the 12-step program didn't actually work for my mum on a consistent level throughout her life. She would get better, and then unfortunately she would relapse. So Turn Up for Recovery was set up by Melia Clapton, who is Eric's wife, and Eric has a treatment center in Antigua called Crossroads Center. He also puts on a guitar festival, a music festival called the Crossroads Guitar Festival, to raise funds for the treatment center in Antigua, and also to help people who wouldn't ordinarily be able to afford the treatment. Now, with Turn Up for Recovery as well, what I feel that the idea behind it is to sort of provide a more contemporary and cool, if you like, gateway to abstinence-based recovery for people who are struggling. I think in the rock and roll world, or in the live music world especially, you know, there is a tendency to lean on drink and drugs to get you, if you're touring a long time, to get you through the night, or you need to drive long hours, or you just fall into it, you know. And also perhaps that people who used to enjoy to go to gigs and then have felt that perhaps they can't go to gigs anymore because there's too much temptation. I think that perhaps Turn Up for Recovery, you know, might provide, if you like, that extra safe haven at live shows that would perhaps prevent people from, you know, succumbing to triggers or, you know, things like that. So, so that's it really. You know, Turn Up for Recovery, their website's turnupforrecovery.org. There's a lot of information there. And my role as an ambassador really is to raise awareness, and wherever I can with concerts that I'm doing, then I can donate part of the funds for that, and spread the word, and also provide an outlet on my merchandise stands for the literature, which you know, which I tend to carry around, you know, and anybody who might be struggling at the gig or has an interest in it, you know, these leaflets are there, and you know, if I can help anybody along the way by providing that, then that's a, you know, I would say a worthy cause. And then of course, on a more fundamental level, music has saved my soul and made it possible for me to survive the challenges and difficulties, both inward and outward, that I've faced. And it is the healer that transcends all languages. And it's a magic that I'm honored and grateful to be able to participate in.
Right, and let me mention that in September, in early September, you're going to be coming to Tampa, and a rehab center, Turning Point of Tampa, is going to sponsor a concert where you and your acoustic guitar, maybe a friend, maybe no friend, are going to play some of your music, some of the Harrison music, some of the Clapton music, and talk about recovery, and maybe turn this thing on its ear where it's stylish to be in recovery. You know, being in recovery is something to be proud of, not a social stigma. You know, the people, especially those with a genetic tendency to be addicted, or those who have been addicted to heroin, which is addictive for life once you've tried it once, for those people to be able to say, hey, I'm proud to tell you I'm in recovery. Just like Eric Clapton is proud to tell you he's in recovery. Just like Will Johns is saying, this is cool, this is the thing to be. You're a young musician, don't get hooked. If you are hooked, it's cool to be in recovery. Tune up your guitar, tune up yourself, and get in recovery. So if anybody is going to be in Tampa in early September and would like to see this concert, or if you'd like to sponsor Will in your community, anywhere, he eventually, with the cream of Clapton, does tour and may be in your community and may have an acoustic guitar and be able to speak to young and older musicians and people who know that musicians are cool about this important cause. And you see up here on the screen, we're going to run a polling question here. Josh, if you want to run it. Just if any of you are interested, you don't have to commit, but if you are interested to donate just $25 to Turn Up for Recovery, which is a charitable organization, and you would like to have the opportunity to talk to Will one-on-one, or we'll set up a live webinar, we'd like to go ahead and start these relationships and support this kind of program. I come from a family of musicians who have had less addiction, but no shortage of addiction. So I understand that, and it would just be great to support Will with this. So Josh, let us know when we've got some answers here. Again, if you answer yes, all we're going to do is contact you and give you a date for a webinar. If you decide not to participate, that's fine. If you want to donate less than $25, that's fine. But trying to get in, if you're in a recovery community and you'd like to have Will come to your community, that may be his new gig with this opportunity to be an ambassador. Will, there's some other ambassadors I see. What do you have anything to say about some of these amazing people? I see.
Well,
I see Derek Trucks and Susan. They're Florida. They live in Jacksonville, Florida, about 3.5 miles from me.
oh wow, they were amazing at the concert for Jeff Beck the other night that I was lucky enough to be able to attend. I literally got off the plane, had a few hours sleep, and then off to the concert. And I've actually been a huge fan of both of them, and wonderful to see them together. And they just make such great music. And my gauge is my hair standing up on my arm, and they certainly do that. I love them. Doyle Bramall, of course, is Eric's right-hand man. Right-hand, left-hander, and I was lucky enough to meet him very briefly for the first time at the concert the other day, and put one of my picks in his hand. And I also met, is Gary Clark there? Is he on the? I'm not sure if he's an ambassador.
Yeah, his picture's not here.
Robert Cray, of course, is another fine blues singer and guitarist that we admire. He was in Brighton not so long ago and had to change his guitar after every song because he just bent the living daylights out of those strings. Who else have we got here?
What's Ronnie Wood like off the stage?
Oh, well, Ronnie Wood used to change my nappies. Ronnie and I go back since to my birth, really. I wonder, do you have that photo handy of us sitting outside one of the stately homes?
I don't think I do. Sorry. We'll show that next time.
And of course, I was in a band called Glider with Ronnie's son Jesse for a few years in the late 90s into the noughties. Jesse being a fine guitarist himself, and Ronnie is just lots and lots of fun. Very exuberant and incredibly creative.
Beautiful painter, amazing painter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very interesting.
Katie Tunstall is another artist. She's a Scottish lady. If you haven't heard her music, then I strongly encourage you to check her out. Katie Tunstall, with an absolutely beautiful voice and a very stylistic writing style. Her lyrics are very poetic and conjures up wonderful mental pictures. Yeah, if you haven't heard her music, then check her out.
Going back to Turn Up for Recovery, do you have a vision for this? I know it's relatively new. I know Eric and his wife are standing behind it, which, you know, can give it a lot of good publicity. What would you like to see it become? Would you like to see these concerts in every city with local bands, and how can all this happen?
Well, I'd just like, maybe, as I said, for it to be synonymous with live music, so that, you know, if there was a gig, it's part of live music. That, you know, just in the same way, I mean, a lot of live music on a grassroots level, people trying to get better, both as a musician. You know, you play in bars, you play in these clubs. Almost all of them, in fact, all of them, I can't remember one that I've played at that wasn't serving alcohol.
Right.
You know, there might be a sign saying, you know, no drugs or whatever, but there certainly isn't a sign saying no alcohol. So I would probably like to see that like I said before as well, that, you know, for people who perhaps, you know, have struggled in the past, and it would be extremely unhealthy for them to suddenly decide that they were going to have a drink after getting themselves off the drink, that they felt supported, you know, in a live music situation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, it might be interesting when you come to Tampa if one night we just go into 5 or 8 different bars and let you take the microphone and talk about the program. Maybe bring
Yeah.
your acoustic guitar, do one song, talk about the program, say how great the band is, and then we go to the next place.
Yeah, and Gwen, who I told you about, would also, although you know, I'm sure within the organization, you know, a lot of places like that, but Gwen, you know, that's her gig, as far as, you know, knowing all of the cool bluesy places where you know, where that might be appropriate and welcomed.
Okay. So let's not forget your own music. I know you're, you know, very polite to talk about everyone else's music. I've listened to your albums. I think they're sensational. What you want to tell us a little bit about each of these albums and then what you're working on now?
Sure. Well, Count on Me was the first one, and that's the one with the stripy jumper on. The title track, Count on Me, was more a prayer to myself, that I could count on myself, if that makes any sense, that I would try and stay true to my beliefs. And sometimes it's hard, and it feels hard, and you're swimming against the tide. And then sometimes, some days, it just comes naturally and you don't even have to try. So, you know, your darkest days are behind you. It's time to step into the light. There's a song as well on that called On My Back, and that's about having a partner, a significant other on your back, and the joys of having them on your back, because it's okay. Of course, with all of my songs, if you look a little deeper into all of the lyrics, with pretty much almost every song that I've ever written, it's all completely filthy and erotic, but that's another story. It depends if you've got time to look that far into it. The next album was Hooks and Lines. In between, and actually at the time of Count on Me and up till Hooks and Lines, I was working in the commercial fishing sector, taking people out deep sea fishing with a rod and line, and Hooks and Lines represents me not having to go and endanger my hands in the middle of the English Channel hunting cod and conger eels and sharks and stuff anymore. And the cover art features me bursting out of the sea with the guitar. Yeah, now I only go to sea when I want. That album features a song called Never Rains, which I wrote about a relationship that I had with a lovely lady in California. When we broke up, I came back to England and found myself in rainy London. And the line is, it never rains in your town, which was LA, but it pours down in mine, which is London. And of course, that lyric relates to the emotional gravity. You know, I didn't feel that the relationship meant quite as much to her as it did to me. Something Old, Something New album is what it said on the tin. As far as some of the songs were brand new that I wrote for the album, and some of them I revisited from earlier in my career from the band Cloud9, just songs that just never got recorded properly, but I felt were great songs. And I did the demos on this very computer that I'm talking to you on, my trusty old 2015 MacBook Pro. And I made the demos, and the drummer that I was working with pulled out just before we were about to go into the studio, and I was so cross well, I was reluctant to stop the momentum, so I decided to just go ahead with the demos that I'd created on the laptop here, and I programmed the drums myself and tried to make them sound like a real drummer in the songs that I felt like they needed to sound like that. Others less so, because the songs were a more contemporary vibe. And so that one is quite what I would say at the moment is my most contemporary sounding, what I would call contemporary blues, or my slant on it. Yeah. And then my most recent album, which I started during the pandemic, I started the album after the hard lockdown, when we were allowed to have 3 people in a room at the same time. Then I got my band in a room and we recorded the backbone of the album live. And then I got pneumonia, and which was also suspected TB, nearly died. Touch wood, luckily I didn't, and here I am talking to you good people. And I was able to finish the album, but I also had to rehabilitate myself of how to sing after having such a difficult lung-based disease, especially during the pandemic. And so I also stopped smoking when I got ill. So that was a big help. So the Blues Daddy album was well, it's mostly 99.9% blues classics, B.B. King songs, Willie Dixon, old Fleetwood Mac, the songs that I love that historically I would go to different countries, for example, to Russia or to Czech Republic or France or Spain or anywhere. I would just go myself and play with a pickup band of local musicians and blues musicians. These are all blues standards, and you know, being that kind of musician, you should be able to get on the stage anywhere, to a blues jam anyway, and play any one of these songs. So that's what that was about. And the title track, Blues Daddy, was the only original on there, which is very simple turnaround that I wrote on slide guitar, just about a daddy who plays the blues when he's at home and goes out on the road and plays the blues when he's out working. And that's all he does, Blues Daddy.
Beautiful.
And those are the ones that are released, and I'm busily trying to finish my up and coming album, which is Yin and Yang, which is going to be all original and quite contemporary. Some new sounds, and I'm quite excited about that. It's been taking forever. That was inspired as well by being forced onto the computer during the pandemic. Obviously, everything in a computer-based world is ones and zeros, black and white, up and down, if you like. And I've found that people were also quite polarized, either believing this or that, without going into too much detail what this and that might have been. And there didn't seem to be much ability for conversation or sharing of ideas, because no, I believe this and you're obviously that, so we can't talk anymore. And I saw a lot of people's relationships, including my own, dissolve, and people who were friends for all their lives all of a sudden weren't talking to each other because of certain beliefs and stuff, which I just thought was absolutely crazy. I would love to think that we can have a conversation about things, and maybe you've got a better idea that through our conversation I might come around to, or I might have an idea that maybe you'd like to come around to. But at the end of the day, being able to have that conversation and being able to share our thoughts and feelings surely should take more importance than holding on to our beliefs so rigidly. But it was a very difficult time anyway. I feel like I'm going on and on, but that's what inspired the Yin and Yang album. There's a lot going on. That's why it's taken so long, I guess.
It's going to be great. So as far as what now, you have a lot of good videos on your website, right? Are most of your good videos on the website, or they're on YouTube also? I don't.
They're on YouTube, yeah. There's a one-stop shop. I have a YouTube channel, which is Will John's Music, and if you just put that into YouTube, I have a logo, which is what I like to call the Willouette, which is this thing here that you see.
Yeah,
that's the Willouette.
The Willouette, I like that. Very neat.
And there's a lot of videos there. There's the videos as well of the concert for Ginger Baker and me performing with Eric. There's original videos that we've made for some of the songs for the albums. Then there's also a lot of live shows as well. And then I've also tried to playlist some of the, how, some of the videos from that fans have shot from their phones and stuff from the audience.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. When you did the Ginger Baker concert, how much rehearsal goes on before a concert like that? How much of a perfectionist is Eric when he directs these concerts?
Well, I think that Eric has his core band, and in the case of the Ginger Baker concert, most of the songs were songs that weren't too far out of his recent set. Whereas with the recent concert, the Jeff Beck concert, obviously all the music was Jeff Beck's music, and I think that he would have been working very, very hard. Although having said that, there was a lot of times when he left the stage at the Jeff Beck concert because Jeff Beck's band would have carried it on for a while. Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart, of course, because they would have been, you know, in the Jeff Beck group way back when. So they had their lineup. So without wanting to give too much of the game away, Eric's the consummate professional, and once again, like I was alluding to with the blues language, as it were, it's a universal language, so you can anticipate and you know what the changes are with a lot of the music, you know. And with Eric's songs as well, I mean, they're just so classic, and a lot of them have been, you know, in the mix for over, you know, 50 years. So days rather than weeks, I would say, to answer the question, Anna.
Right, right. And then, how old were you during the Journeyman album recordings, and tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, I would say I was about, I think 15. So I'd already, you know, I'd already been playing the guitar for a little bit. You know, definitely been stretching my vocal cords, and had an idea that, you know, that I wanted to pursue that that line of, you know, that as a profession. I was in the studio when Eric was recording Bad Love, especially the vocals, which was exhilarating.
Yeah.
And he also taught me that riff, that opening riff of Bad Love, which was exciting, and another, if you like, little string to my bow. I mean, one of the greatest things which, you know, which was just popped into my mind was, you know, being picked up from school by Eric a lot of the time, because he picked me up in a Ferrari Testarossa, no less, you know. So I'd know that he was coming, and I'd be sort of lurking about the school gates, and then all of a sudden, this amazing supercar would come roaring up the street, and all my friends at school would be like, "Whoa, look at that car!" And then I'd just get to walk through them all and get into it, and off we'd roar down the road. That was pretty cool, you know.
That is still very cool. Very cool. But I think you told was somebody was staying with Eric at the time of the recording of Journeyman. That was Phil Collins there, or was that another?
Yeah, my memory is a little shaky, but definitely around that time, I remember doing. We went to lunch during the rehearsals, and we, in fact, no, we left the rehearsals to go to lunch, and as we were walking to the cars, Phil Collins stopped and said, "Oh, left my jacket behind." And I said, "Phil, don't worry, mate, no jackets required," which was, of course, his album at the time. So everybody was, "Oh, very funny, Will." But another thing that we used to do, Eric and I were morning people. We'd get up early, hence going fishing a lot and stuff. But sometimes everybody would be sleeping upstairs. Phil Collins, Greg Fillinganes, Nathan East and stuff. And we'd be down in the kitchen, and the mischievous streak would come on, and we'd get the pots and pans off the wall in the kitchen, and wooden spoons, and go upstairs and creep into their rooms, and then bash the pots and pans with wooden spoons and wake them up, you know, and get everybody up that way. Which,
it's hard to imagine Eric Clapton doing that to Phil Collins, but it's good to know that they're human and that they're pretty funny guys.
Yeah, definitely. There was always some mischief going on, you know, always some pranks and, you know, funny stuff. Come say hi.
Hey, babe. Oh, another one.
Here's another one. Who's that? Who's that?
Hey,
Minnow and Pip.
nice. I do want to mention for the audience that you are more than an avid fisherman. And when you were in Tampa, you were all about fishing, and we brought you some bait and tried to get you on a boat, but that's
I was
very,
fishing when I got the call from Patty, and then I was fishing when I called you.
yeah.
You know, I was annoying the catfish. That I think there was only about that much water at the end of the dock, so you know I was limited to catching, you know, catfish and stingrays. But you know, given the chance, I'd have been out there.
Yeah, so if anyone on this webinar wants to meet Will John, bring him to your city, have him play a concert for the right cause, and go fishing with him. This is your opportunity, and it's a great opportunity. So Will, I've really enjoyed visiting with you. Is there anything else that we want? I think we'll come back and do another one of these, and I'll be able to show everyone the little video of you playing the song Layla for our dog Layla.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I've got 3 different people here who have said, can he please play the guitar now? And then one person says they hope to see you in Houston. Another person says they hope to see you in Vermont. So, you know, you've got a lot of friends here in the States, that's for sure.
All right. So what would you have me play, Alan?
Wow. Well, what is a Harrison song that you're going to play in Tampa in September?
Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling, see the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Will, when you do your acoustic act, are there, you know, the way Clapton moved Layla from a electric rock song to an acoustic song, do you have some of those that you're going to put in your?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I might turn a rock song into a reggae, or take something that's never really been played on acoustic, I mean, I play acoustic like it's an electric guitar anyway, because I just don't know any better. And I learned on an electric guitar. They always say, you know, you should learn on acoustic and then move on to electric. But that's not what I did. So yeah, I like to take them and turn them around and twist them up a little bit.
Yeah, and if you have a young boy and or a young girl, age 12 to 14 or 15, and you want to start them on guitar, you get them an electric guitar.
That's right.
They'll have a lot more fun with that.
That's right, and it's a lot less difficult to hold those strings down. And yeah, you know, and one common mistake is that people trying to hold the strings down with the soft part of their finger, and of course you have to use a lot of effort because that's the soft part. But if you can get right round and use the tip of your finger, the bone is behind it, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But,
Do you teach guitar, Will?
I do very little. It has to be. I mean, and I'm talking about here, but because of, you know, I'm on the road quite often. So I do little bits and pieces, and quite often I'll do things, you know, online.
Got it. Well, yeah, you would think online would work.
Yeah, I showed you my my jewelry that I make, the eco-friendly shark's teeth, and this was made possible by the young man that I was teaching lived in New Zealand, and he agreed to pay me in shells.
Oh, that's nice. That's right. So yeah, that's right. If anyone wants a guitar lesson from you, they could get the guitar lesson from anywhere in the world.
That's absolutely right.
That's really interesting. By the way, I just want to mention that you told me that you really hadn't started to play the guitar. You were banging on some drums as a kid. And Eric came to you and probably was tired of hearing you bang on the drums. And I think you said he handed you a guitar and said, use a proper instrument. Which I love that.
That was it. That was it. I was it was a studio at the house, and of course a lot of the time, you know, he wouldn't be there. He'd be on tour himself. But I used to go down and wail on the drums, usually at about 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, I was up early, and anyway, this one morning I'm smashing away to ZZ Top, Eliminator, and he came down and he said, Will, don't you think it's time you learn how to play a proper musical instrument? So of course I took that to mean the guitar, and you know, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Will, we've overstayed our welcome. We really, really appreciate
Thank you so much for having me on and let me tell my stories. I hope that it's been of some interest.
Oh, it's been very interesting. I can see from the questions and the comments from the audience that they love you as much as everybody loves you. And anyone who has any ideas for how to spread the word on the addiction mission, or you know how Will can help you in some way, please let us know. We definitely here's a guy who has gotten a lot, wants to give back, has so much talent, and with the leverage to do it. So it's going to be very neat. Anything you want to do here to end it, Will?
I could just direct you to my website, which is my kind of one-stop shop. I also have a little bit of a fishing show, which started out strong and then kind of got a little bit carried away into the realms of comedy, and of course I ran out of fish to catch. But that's called Hooked Up in a Heartbeat. If anybody wants to take that any further, that would be cool. There's also the potential for a spin-off cooking show, which would be called Cooked Up in a Heartbeat.
I like
it. Because I do know how to fillet a fish or two.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, thank you for your interest, and yeah, get in touch.
Yeah.
Easy.
All right.
All of the socials, Will John's Music, across the board.
Beautiful.
And thank you, Alan. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a fantastic afternoon. And I hope everybody enjoyed this. Again, give us your input. My email address is agassman, AGASSMAN at gassmanpa.com, and I'll forward to Will anything you send. Thanks again. Take care. Bye.